We have a morning where we kind of divide the morning into two parts. The first part is really celebratory, a way of thanking and recognizing and loving on each other a little bit. So we're going to do that first, and then a little later in the morning after another break, we'll spend a few minutes just talking about what's ahead for us a little bit and doing some Q&A. So you can expect a short presentation and a longer discussion with you later in the morning. But this first part is really about celebration, and I know you'll want to celebrate all the things we have going. Let's begin with what has become a new tradition for us, which is recognizing the chairs of the college's governing councils. The college has an unusual approach to shared governance, one that there's nothing quite like it in Florida and really anywhere else in the country I've seen. It took us a year or two to figure out how to do this, but it has really accelerated our work and strengthened the quality of our collaboration, and it depends very heavily on the intense effort and insight of the co-chairs of each of those councils, and they represent you and all of us together and put just an enormous amount of time in. So let's take a moment to thank them for that work. For the College Learning Council, the recently completed chairs were Chris Borglum. Chris, if you would stand, please, and let us thank you. Where is he? There he is. He's predictably in the back row. And Chris shared that responsibility this past year, of course, with Kay Walter, our Chief Learning Officer. Kay, would you stand? She's down here. Thank you. The College Planning Council, which is responsible for all the processes associated with strategic planning and then converting that plan into real budgets and then making sure that we're hitting the targets that we're after. That is our institutional effectiveness. The co-chairs this past year were Linda Anthem. Linda, would you stand down here? Thank you. And she shares that responsibility with Susan Kelly. Susan? The college, what used to be called the Executive Council, actually changed its name to College Operations Council. They just sort of do the day-to-day, the 1,000 little things that are not particularly policy relevant, but they make things go and fix the problems and so forth. So they have amazingly long and difficult agendas. That's chaired by Keith Hauk this past year. Keith is here. Where are you, Keith? Thank you. We have a staff person who works with all of these councils. I'll get to the faculty council in a minute. Been very, very helpful in coordinating those agendas, playing traffic cop and making sure that the right issues get to the right people for good decision making. And that's been done this past year very ably by David Rogers. David? There's David. There he is. And finally, the Faculty Council, which has had such a busy agenda the last 2 or 3 years and done remarkable work, co-chaired this past year by Amy Bosley. Amy? Woohoo is right. It's immensely difficult work, and you'll recall that in her address last year, she brought some toys that her children play with as sort of concrete touch points for her speech. She's now playing with those toys herself. It's very demanding work chairing that council. She did a super, super job, and she shared that with this year's incoming chair, Tom Burns. Tom? Now, the upcoming 0607 chairs, and there's some musical chairs associated with this. The College Planning Council, again, is co-chaired by Susan Kelly and Fitzroy Farquharson. He's well into his work already, with Suzette Doheny as co-chair-elect. So Suzette and Fitzroy, would you stand and let us say thank you. Keith Hauk will again chair the Operations Council, although I'm sure he's welcome to suggestions for an alternate chair. The College Learning Council will be co-chaired again by Kay Walter, and Amy Bosley's accepted that role. We sort of rotate from that college planning, faculty council chair into the College Learning Council so that there's some continuity in the faculty's engagement with those issues. So Amy laid down one torch to pick up another, and we appreciate the energy and effort you're putting into all that. And of course, your faculty council co-chairs who do keep me informed and do wonderful work throughout the college will be Tom Burns and Rose Watson. Rose, would you stand again? Where's Rose? There she is. These folks do important work, and it is immensely time-consuming, but they also kind of bear the spirit of the institution. There have been lots of times in the last 2 years when we had something difficult to do. It was their humor, their insight, and their capacity to see an alternate solution to many problems that's helped us succeed. So, again, for all of the people engaged and all they represent, those who serve on those governing councils, let me just say thank you, and we appreciate all that you do. Now we will move to the second part of the recognition. This involves the endowed chairs, and there's good news there and a lot of smiling faces down front. To announce and introduce the endowed chairs this year, the CEO of our foundation is here. That's Geraldine Gallagher. I should say, unless are you going to talk about the campaign or anything at all? Briefly. I just want to acknowledge where Geraldine has brought us. She arrived almost 6 years ago as the head of the foundation at a time when the stock market was a really scary place to be. And it was supposed to be very, very difficult to raise money because a lot of people had lost a lot of their wealth on paper, at least. At that time, we had just under $16 million in endowment in the foundation. Now, almost 6 years later, that's over $50 million. Most of which is committed to scholarships, but you'll see some of which is committed to support for faculty today. She has built an enormously effective organization. It's an all-new staff, built deep relationships in the community, and we're now in the quiet phases of a major gift campaign that may yield another $30 or $40 million to the foundation over the next couple of years, all of which is important work and not supposed to be able to be done by a community college, but they just don't. Whoever says that just doesn't know us, do they? We're always breaking the rules. So let me introduce a very, very effective CEO of the Valencia Foundation, Geraldine Gallagher.
Good morning. Actually, the reason that our foundation has been so effective is because of the work that each of you do in your classroom every single day. Raising money is a lot of fun, but as I was saying to some of the endowed chair recipients today, giving away money is even more fun. So for scholarships and chairs, I really enjoy it. I spoke with the new faculty last week, and I mentioned to them that over the summer, a couple of articles had sort of crossed my radar screen, and two in particular told me that life in Central Florida has become economically unfeasible for a vast majority of our citizens. One local survey showed that families with household incomes of less than $75,000 cannot afford to buy a house in Central Florida at this time. And even for those who are at slightly less incomes, renting houses and apartments is almost impossible. A second was, you probably saw this, the food bank released a study that showed that in our community every day 1/3 of the population has to decide between feeding their children and paying their bills, paying for utilities, paying for housing costs, paying for health care. And so for them, you add to that the factor of trying to add tuition and books and all of the expenses, the time away from work, that opportunity cost to the life that basically they have trouble covering even the most fundamental portions of what they do every day. So I think that's why that makes the work of the foundation, and I know my board believes this, Sandy believes this, our college administration, and those of you who are donors, and there are lots of you here in the room, it absolutely is so important. The need for scholarships at Valencia has never been higher. And I will tell you that even with a very fine, very aggressive federal financial aid program and private scholarships, we're still meeting less than half the need of our students. That's half the documented need. That's just the need that we know about that fits the federal guidelines. My board of directors is committed to serving the students who need us most, and I think that might surprise you. It's not necessarily the poorest of our students. It's the working students who are just above that federal guideline who have absolutely no resources and no way to attend college. So as Sandy mentioned, we're embarking on a $20 million capital campaign. Our stretch goal is 30, and those are private gifts. That doesn't factor in the state match that we get, which would get us to the $35 or $40 million mark. But I hope that each of you will consider making an investment in our campaign in the future of our students. And if you will give me just about 10 seconds to do a little pitch for our Taste for Learning. How many of y'all attended the Taste for Learning last year? Oh, good number. How many of you actually remember the Taste for Learning last year? It was a wonderful event. We had we had about 800 people in attendance. We had 6,000 bottles of wine poured. Yeah, you do the math. Anyway, but more importantly, we raised about $234,000 in scholarships for students who need us most. And this year we've set the goal at $300,000, but I got to tell you, our early support has been phenomenal. We've already have $150,000 cash in hand, and we have about $300,000 in kind. And I'm pretty sure we're going to sneak up on probably $500,000 net from this event, including state match for new scholarships. What's remarkable about the event, and I want to say this because I want to brag on our community partners a little bit. I won't list all of them because that would take us longer than the chairs is going to. But check out our website. It's an amazing group of people who are willing to donate so that every single expense, from the food to the wine to the venue, and it's at the Royal Pacific Resort, which is absolutely gorgeous, everything is donated. So that every single dollar that you'll spend for tickets or for sponsorships or for silent auction receipts, you get to go shopping too, 100% of that goes directly to scholarships. And I don't know of another event in Central Florida that is able to make that statement. So if you haven't gone, talk to some of the people who raised their hands and see if you think it might be something you would enjoy. It's a great cause, and I hope that I will see you on October 14th at the Royal Pacific at Universal Orlando. Now, to the fun part you've all been waiting for. It is a great honor to award our recipients, and I have to thank the committee that worked so hard in choosing really fine recipients, and all of you who took the time to fill out the applications and go through the competition. We've got 24 this year, so it's going to take just a few minutes, but our first recipient is Joan Alexander. Joan is a professor of architecture, engineering, and technology on West. Joan has a little foot trouble, so she's just going to wave at us from down there. And the rest of you, I don't want to hear you have foot trouble. You got to come get your award. She is the recipient of the Endowed Chair for the Bank of America Chair in Business Management. Joan plans to use her award to launch vodcasting in her classroom. Does everybody know what vodcasting is? No? Okay, video on demand broadcasting. We're very high-tech here at Valencia. She will videotape her classroom lectures and then stream them online to her students in their iPods. Joan Alexander. Congratulations. Next, let me introduce Joseph Bivens, Professor of Chemistry on the East Campus and the Endowed Chaired recipient of the Lester N. Mandel Chair in Physical and Natural Sciences. Joseph plans to use his award to develop a fully online WebCT Introduction to General Chemistry course, complete with an online laboratory for alternative delivery students. The online laboratory intrigues me. Joseph Bivens. It's my pleasure to recognize Beverly Bond, Clinical Coordinator of Radiography, and Julie McCautry, Program Director of Radiography on West, and the Endowed Chair recipients of the Ira Vincent Henderson Chair in Nursing and Allied Health. With the support of the Endowed Chaired funds, they plan to produce and disseminate educational videos, and these videos can be used through a variety of media options, including video, DVD, WebCT, and iPods, and they'll be made available through the Library Reserve Desk. Beverly Bond, Julie McCautry. What did we do before iPods? Our next awardee is Ken Bourgoin, Professor of Culinary Management out in West, and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Central Florida Restaurant Association Chair in Restaurant and Food Service Management. Ken plans to create a symposium on wine study. Can I attend? In the Culinary Arts Department in the fall and the spring of 2006 and 2007. And I know this has been a priority Jim Inglis has talked about for a long time. So please join me in celebrating Ken Bourgoin. We now recognize Jacqueline DiMartino, Professor of Math on Osceola campus and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Dr. Phillips Chair in Free Enterprise. Jackie plans to use her award to securely outfit each mathematics classroom at a minimum with the most recent models and versions of graphing calculators, view screens, and software that includes business applications. Y'all remember last year graphing calculators were a whole theme for the chairs. But I'd like to honor Jackie DiMartino. Our next recipient is Deborah Ann Drobny. Deborah is Professor of Social Science on the East Campus and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Howard L. Palmer Chair in Foreign Languages. Professor Drobny plans to use her award to facilitate a greater number of Valencia students becoming involved with the ASL Interpreted Theater. Deborah Ann Drobny. Congratulations. Okay, and our next recipient, Fitzroy Farquharson, Professor of Mathematics on the West Campus and the Endowed Chair recipient of the University Club of Orlando Chair in Advanced Computer Technology. Fitzroy plans to use his award to help identify the most effective and efficient ways to merge computer-mediated and traditional instruction to maximize student learning of mathematical concepts and procedures. Fitzroy Farquharson. Our next recipient is Jean Marie Furman, Professor of English on the Winter Park campus, and the Endowed Chair recipient of the University Club of Orlando Chair in Humanities. Jean Marie will use her award as tuition to attend Odyssey, the fantasy writing workshop, and the Weekend of Music, Art, and Imagination Festival. And she'll bring back ideas and strategies for teaching writing in her class, and that sounds like fun. Jean Marie Furman. Next, I would like to recognize Richard Gare, Professor of Reading on East and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Abe and Tess Wise Chair in the Study of the Shoah. Professor Gare is already back from taking an educator trip to Poland, the Czech Republic, Auschwitz, and other concentration camps, and told me right before we started that this is going to become an annual pilgrimage for him. This trip will help to enhance his new course at Valencia, Literature and the Media of the Holocaust. Richard Gare. Our next awardee is Bill Gombash, Professor of Speech on the East Campus and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Sue Luzader Chair in Communications. Bill plans to conduct a study using empirically tested survey methods to measure motivation as it relates to learning success. Bill Gombash. Motivation is good. I would next like to recognize Daniel Gutierrez, Professor of Criminal Justice on East and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Patricia Havel Whalen Chair in Social Sciences. Professor Gutierrez plans to use his award to develop a link course providing Valencia students a learning opportunity, interdisciplinary in nature, by exploring both the sociological and the scientific approaches to crime. Daniel Gutierrez. Our next awardee is Gloria Hines, counselor on the West Campus, an Endowed Chair recipient of the Frida Louise Foreman Chair in Family Resource Development. With the support of endowed chair funds, she plans to conduct research on methods used to support international students in the area of dissociative disorder, anxiety, and depression. Gloria Hines. Next, I'd like to recognize Jim Inglis, Program Director of Hospitality and Tourism on West, an endowed chair recipient of the Central Florida Hotel and Lodging Association's Chair in Hospitality Management. Jim plans to use his award to help students attend the International Hotel, Motel, and Restaurant Show in New York City in November. The students will be able to identify values, distinguish cultural obstacles to training and managing, and learn the importance of planning and running a high-volume, world-class restaurant. Jim Inglis. Jim, I'm available to chaperone. Our next awardee is Jim Johnson, Professor of Information Technology on the West Campus and the Endowed Chair recipient of the SunGuard Collegius Endowed Teaching Chair in Computer Sciences. He plans to use his award to incorporate audio and video web-based material into the design of an online course in a form that's accessible to students through both desktop computers and portable devices. Jim Johnson. I would like to recognize Elise Kusnitz, Professor of English on the Winter Park campus and the endowed chair recipient of the Jesse and Eugene Dry Endowment of the English-Speaking Union Central Florida Branch Chair in English. We really have to work on condensing that name. Elise plans to attend a residential writer's workshop, both to enhance her writing skills, but also to serve as a role model and a leader for her students on professional development. Elise Kusnitz. Our next awardee is Pauline Lizotte, Professor of Biology on East and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Lockheed Martin Chair in Science. She plans to use her award to provide students the opportunity to learn within an extraordinary learning environment through a newly developed LINK course. And the name's pretty cool. Crimes, Criminals, and Science, the CSI Approach. And you may have noticed there's a connection with Professor Gutierrez. They'll be using a multidisciplinary approach to deliver this course to students in the next academic year. And I like the fact that y'all were creative and took two different chairs and worked them together. So as y'all are thinking about your projects for next year, think about some of those partnerships. Our next awardee is Brian Macon, Professor of Math on the West Campus and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Lockheed Martin Chair in Mathematics. Brian plans to use his award to purchase software that simplifies the creation, editing, and publishing of multimedia presentations to support student learning in math. Brian Macon. Now allow me to introduce Rick Powell, Professor of Math on West Campus and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Raymer F. McGuire Jr. Chair in Mathematics. Professor Powell plans to research and implement tutorial deliverance mechanisms, implement supplemental tutoring offered through textbook companies, and identify alternative delivery models to increase student access to tutorial services offered in the math lab. All that said, he's going to make it a lot easier to learn math. Rick Powell. Our next awardee is Lana Powell, Professor of Business on West and the Endowed Chair recipient of the John and Francis McLeod Chair in Business. Lana plans to use her award to attend the 7th Annual Hawaii International Conference on Business, providing her with the opportunity to enhance her own learning and professional development and also to network with an international peer group. Lana Powell. Mahalo, Lana. I would like to recognize Yasmin Quadri, Professor of Social Sciences on East and the Endowed Chair recipient of the William C. Dimitri Chair in Education for Special Needs. Yasmin plans to use her award to incorporate the use of assistive technology for student teachers who are enrolled in the Technology for Educators course. Yasmin Quadri. Our next awardee is Tammy Rogers, Professor of Nursing on West and the Endowed Chair recipient of the McGuire Family Teacher Endowed Chair. Tammy plans to use her award to develop innovative online and classroom teaching methods based on the theories of constructivism, metaconceptual awareness, and multiple intelligences. These new methods will empower students to have a voice in shaping their individual learning experiences. Tammy Rogers. Next, I would like to recognize Susan Stone, Professor of Nursing on West and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Wayne Dunch Chair in Geriatrics. With the support of the Endowed Chair funds, Susan intends to implement a plan of study for her students enrolled in Nursing 1 and Nursing 4 to learn more about the care of aging adults, that would be most of us, in an effort to prepare students for this career specialty. Susan Stone. And finally, and last but not least, we congratulate Y.L. Yusuf, Professor of Computer Engineering on West and the Endowed Chair recipient of the Bell South Chair in Communications and Engineering Technologies. Y.L. plans to use his award to purchase a server software license that will allow students to remotely access lab equipment. Y.L. Yusuf. Did you notice we had a lot of alternative delivery methods as part of the projects? I'm kind of wondering if students will ever come back to campus. But the work that you all are doing is really wonderful because the students are trying to balance all of those things we were talking about earlier, working in families and community responsibilities. Giving them access to other ways to learn is absolutely enormous. I would like you all to give me one last round of applause for our chairs for 2006-2007. The application for faculty chairs will be earlier this year, so start pondering your project now. The next round of awards will open on November 5th. The applications will be due on December 19th. A faculty selection committee will work and make those award announcements in early or mid-January. The funds will be available in April of 2007 this year, so as you're thinking about your projects, kind of factor that in. We're basically going to have 2 overlapping chair years. Thank you for your kind attention this morning. I know this was a long presentation. I'm so grateful for the finest faculty in America. Every day, you help the students in your classrooms transform their lives. You make a difference, you nurture them, you care for them, you help them learn, you provide all of the conditions that make them, that make learning possible for them. And at the end of the day, you help them build the lives that they've always dreamed of. We're awfully glad to have all of you safely back on campus. Have a wonderful renewing semester. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Tom Burns, the president of your Faculty Association.